Welcome back. How we doing? I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas. Hit the like button. Oh, yes. Too loud mic. I have never, ever changed my microphone volume. It has literally been the same since day one. So, I can make it louder. How's that? What about if I'm this close to the microphone? Hit the like button for me. I'm excited to be back. Thanks for dealing with the weather issues that we were having on Friday. I appreciate the patience, but all the power kept going out, so I didn't really want to be live and then have to deal with going back up and down. Anyway, I hope you had a Merry Christmas. We got probably a pretty long show for tonight set up because I was out Friday. But we have a very special week of streams coming up. We're going to have another guest. This one's a little bit more tentative than the last because, he's in Ukraine right now. And we're going to have Nuck and Futz Yuri on. You guys all know Yuri very well, especially based on the videos that he posts, though some of you might not be able to associate him directly with those videos. But we'll be reviewing some of that footage. He's going to have some exclusive stuff for us to take a look at that he hasn't released elsewhere. And the plan is to have him here 6 o'clock normal time on Wednesday. But because he's in Ukraine, we are going to just slap a big old tentative around that, if that makes sense. All right? Is that a sure mic, Ronnie? Yes, it sure is. You betcha. Yeah, it's a sure mic. I have the SM7B over on the other side there. But we're gonna talk about quite a bit tonight. We're gonna be seeing a lot of footage out of the East, as we have been. We'll see. I want to say 1 or 2 videos of the South. I think we've got some stuff to review of Hearson being targeted. We're also going to see some footage from around the world. We're going to see some red on red kind of stuff out of Afghanistan. That's moving on. I think I have some Myanmar footage for us to take a look at, but it's the combat footage show, and that's what we're here to do, is watch footage. So if you wouldn't mind tapping on the like button, I first need to mention a word for our sponsor. Our sponsor for tonight is going to be Nautilus Ammunition. Guys, I shoot 9mm and 5.56 almost exclusively. I've got 308s, I've got a 45 here or there. 2 World Wars. But I typically just train with 9mm and 5.56. And if you're looking for 9mm and 5.56, especially if you're looking for it in bulk, Nautilus is the place to go. They're not a retailer, they're a manufacturer. So they can sell things at cheaper prices than your standard ammo warehouse. Nautilus is right here out of the United States, and they've got a subscription service that when you sign up for a subscription for 9mm, for 5.56, or whatever else they have, you're actually going to get free shipping with that, which is pretty dope. There's a link down below for you to go check out their Instagram. I'm sure you guys can find your way to Nautilus Ammunition from there. We always have to be careful sharing links to stuff like that because YouTube is YouTube. Anyway, I got a new thing back behind me. I'm just trying it out for now. My grandma's new husband, it's not my granddad, otherwise, the kids call him granddad. Anyway, he made that for me. It's got a thin green line through it, and I love it. So I set it there. I don't know if it's going to stay there forever. How we doing? Where's everybody chiming in from? I know this dude needs to poop. No. We've been there, done that. Yeah, we're good. Tucson, welcome in from Tucson, Arizona. What's up, St. George, Utah, South Bend, Indiana. I got the shirt you're wearing for Christmas. This is one of my favorites. This is OG Funker merch. Peace through superior firepower. I love it. Grandma getting it. Hey, man. New York, Indiana, Virginia. Oh, my goodness, here we go. Colorado. Let's turn the music on. My basement. I was just there. I didn't see you. That's weird. Iceland, Israel. Welcome in. What is this? It's kind of a banger. Texas. Can we get a fart or two from Detroit? Like, you want one from Detroit? I'm not sure I understand. Anyway, let's get into the footage, guys. let's get into the footage, because like I said, I've got a nice long list of footage. This might be one of the shows that we kind of just steamroll through everything. You know, I don't know. Every other show or so seems like we just play footage after footage after footage. Because from a context perspective, you guys already know typically what a lot of the context is, because oftentimes I'm really only relaying the context that Josh and or Will have put on the website. But the very first video I wanted to put up here is not the most not safe for work piece of footage. It's not, you know, we're not going to see people getting blown into pieces, where, you know, you're not going to see major CQB type stuff here. But what I'm about to show you is the epitome, for me, of combat footage. What we're going to see is we're going to see a tank assault supported by dismounted infantry. And this is quite honestly, quite literally, my favorite kind of combat footage. My favorite kind of combat footage to review. And the reason I say that is this helps you truly understand maneuver warfare. It helps you understand what a macro level situation might look like. And it's also high definition, right? Oftentimes, a lot of the footage that we end up getting our hands on... Ow! A lot of times, you know, a lot of the footage we end up getting our hands on has been uploaded and re-uploaded and downloaded and then re-uploaded 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. So by the time we get to it, it's like 480p quality. I don't have a great location for this. It'd be easy to assume that this is somewhere from the east, though. Let's take a look. This is a Ukrainian tank setting conditions for an infantry advance with infantry laying support by fire. Abu Hudger, thank you for the 1053. Just being here is enough, man, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Abu Hudger, thanks for the 5, dude. All right, let's bring it up halfway here, and I want to roll back to some of this and just chat about it for a minute. Chat about why This is the pinnacle for me of footage. There's a question that came in that I actually do want to answer: is how difficult is it for a tank to be in the woods firing versus, you know, or in the same breath, you know, take contact and be destroyed? Very easy in both situations, right? And that's one of the reasons that under normal circumstances, you always want to support your tanks with, you know, dismounted infantry. We've also seen Russia primarily using drones. And in fact, we're going to see a video of that later tonight, using drones almost in that supportive role where they can, you know, watch 360 degrees around and, you know, presumably notify the tankers that there's a threat. But what you're looking at here is combined arms. You know, quite simply, that's what this is. Infantry is setting a support by fire for the tank. The tank is setting conditions for the infantry to then advance. This is not training. You can hear rounds. This is a two-way range. If this is training, it's you know, some really wild Eastern European shit. You know, I remember seeing a video of Russians training, and they were shooting each other. It was nuts to watch. But this is not training. What you're seeing is, you know, a well-trained military performing combined arms here. So it's really, like I said, this is the pinnacle of combat footage. Russia didn't support their tanks; just tried to roll into Kyiv to talk about bad tactics. Well, I mean, we've talked about Russia's, you know, follies before. Ukraine is not without its follies, but I have seen very little Russian tank footage. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I've seen very little Russian tank footage where you see, you know, infantry providing that support by fire. But it's all about setting conditions, you know, developing or creating the appropriate conditions to move forward, take and then hold ground is what you're watching here. It's suppression mostly. You're not really caring what you hit. Your infantry, absolutely right. That support by fire position, or that fire base is what that is. It really just suppresses so that tank can do what it's supposed to do, and and vice versa. Or, you know, that's why they call it combined arms. All right, let's move on though. But yeah, I wanted to cover this one right out of the gate. You know, I actually retweeted this one out because, you know, it's high definition. This is what is absolutely happening in Ukraine right now. And just to be honest with you, it's sights, sounds, top to bottom. Awesome piece of footage. The next one that I have, we're actually going to move into our location-specific footage here. We're going to be moving into the east, and we're going to start in Soledar. Some of this footage that you guys will have already seen. I talk about this all the time, folks. One second. I'm a little coffee today. I'm not a small coffee. I just have a cough, so I'm coffee. I talk about this all the time. This is not a news show, right? Please don't expect to show up here and, you know, get the latest and greatest of what's happening on the ground to the minute. This show is really for us to connect over footage, to discuss it, to talk about it, to bounce questions off of each other. I ask you guys questions all the time. And especially tonight, we're going to be covering some stuff that was released last week since I wasn't here on Friday. And this is one of those that was covered last week. This comes from Soledar in the east. And these are Ukrainian troops moving to cover under indirect fire. That video is coming up for you guys right now. When do you Blueberry, when do you think ISK will fall? Never. Not anymore.
Я цю хуйню побачив. Я дивлюся, думаю, куди йобне, блядь. Давай, розтягуй. Оце в'їбало, йоба. Тупо дивлюся, думаю, що за хуйня. Уф. Ні, я ніхуя не дивлю. Припав, так чую, думаю, а ну. Ух, і в уші дали.
Погнали тепер в цей. Поки перезарядка.
В підвал?
Да. Пошли поки перезарядка.
Я вам обіцяв, що буде прикольно. А ви мені.
3-9. Перед хатою. Перед квартирою.
Записав. Тепер Ігрик.
That 7.4U's making sexy eyes at me. Ooh.
Я просто не знаю, що ззаді.
Давай, давай, давай.
Понял.
А стовба коли знесло цього нахуй?
Блядь, дивіться, там чувак возле нього входив, отут їдьте накатано.
Отут, да?
І що там?
Да. Отам чувак від ногу втивав.
Да?
На лепесток награти, ну не на лепесток, це не кричав, що чувака.
Phantom, I see your question there. We're gonna cover that one in just a little bit. I had a question come across over with a donation attached to it. Hey, thank you very much for that, Abu Hajr, for the 527 once that converted. Do you also believe that this war will surely turn global because a lot of rich and powerful people want it that way? Be totally honest, please. Yeah, I'll be totally honest with you. And note, let's circle way back before somebody clips that short segment. I'm not saying yes, I believe that. I actually don't believe that. I think there's going to come a point where Ukraine ends up setting whatever conditions there are that are desirable for them. You know, the U.S., the rest of the powers in the West have said that they will not negotiate with Russia on behalf of Ukraine. Ukraine has to be at the table. And again, it goes back to something I've said before. Ukraine has to be the one to determine when the conditions are appropriate for them to surrender. I can't do that. You can't do that. Biden can't do that. But I think Ukraine will reach a point where they have set the appropriate conditions, probably within the next year, for them to come to the negotiating table from a position of power. I don't see this, the way things currently go, as progressing far beyond that. I see that there's the potential for it to, if the United States government and the British government, the West, I'll just say in general, really wants it to. I don't consider providing munitions as capabilities to Ukraine escalations personally. It's kind of like you're watching two people fighting on the subway. One of them's got a baseball bat, the other one's bare fists. You give him a baseball bat, the guy with the baseball bat shouldn't be pissed off that you gave him the baseball bat. But that's how I look at that. I know it's kind of a roundabout way to answer the question, but the more we see Ukraine pushing back, gaining ground, Russia has also regained some ground. We'll talk about that at some point again tonight as well. The more I see Ukraine pushing back, the more we see footage like this that shows combined arms, maneuver warfare, textbook style stuff. The more Western aid that gets provided, Ukraine is in a better and better position of strength to negotiate. I'll move on from that though. Rodrigo, thank you for the 526. Anthony, thank you for the $5. Happy holidays, Funkers. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you, man. Thank you, Ronnie and team, for correcting the glamour of war that Hollywood portrays. Thanks very much for that, man. That's one of our stated missions and goals. Big Val, thanks for the $5 just came in. Ronnie, can you touch on the difference between direct and indirect fire? Yeah, direct fire would be something akin to line of sight necessary. Indirect fire being something where line of sight is not necessary in the most simplest of terms, right? So imagine a gunshot versus mortars. One's, you don't necessarily need line of sight. Gunshot, straight line, generally. It's not really how ballistics works, but... All right, let's move into our next one. We've got a Ukrainian squad moving through some of the destruction in Bakhmut, and I'll reiterate one more time, well, probably over and over again tonight, that we're going to be covering some things that were released last week. We don't pretend to be a news show. We are a combat footage team. That's what we care about, is documenting and collating combat footage. So as I bring things up, if we haven't covered them here before, but you've seen them elsewhere, that's dope. Nice work. Check this out.
Идем.
Тут так само то лице. Якщо не хочеш потрапити в сектор, то дивися в себе. Знову навісні, знову все як у вісні, знову рамки закисні, я не
I've got copywritten music here. I played a little bit of it. I'm going to need to turn on something else though. Where do you buy the t-shirt from, you Nazi? I'll let that one go. Exclamation point merch. Let's bring it back up. What's the difference between hot and not hot? One make you go owie. Let's move on to the next one. We're going to see some footage out of Mariinka. This is actually one of the first times that I recall seeing footage from Mariinka, and I want to show you guys on the map where that is. Let me get the ISW campaign map pulled up here. And let's go full screen. All right. So, we haven't looked at the campaign map yet tonight. So this is where this next piece of footage we're going to see is coming from, and I've seen a couple other pieces of footage that should end up hitting the website over the next 24 or so. But just to give you some semblance of understanding where geographically Mariinka is. And let's go back to the footage. Coming up for you guys now. This is cell phone footage of a firefight in Mariinka. I think I'm pronouncing that right, by the way. I did work on that one. So it's apparent that there's an additional shooter somewhere off camera. All right. Coming back up. Blueberry, thanks for the $27.99 Canadian. Got a question about your opinion on the cartel wars. We're going to see some footage of Nuevo Laredo tonight towards the end of the stream. That's currently been ongoing since the early 1990s. Yeah, well, I mean, war's bad anywhere it is kind of my opinion on it. It sucks that it's within spitting distance of Texas. Like I said, we're going to watch some footage tonight of an ambush, a Mexican army by the cartels in Nuevo Laredo. Thanks very much for the 2053. Torek, thank you for the $5. Stupid idea. If Ivan can't make Wednesday, have it community open mic. Probably be a shit show. Here are my thoughts on that. No. Open mic night with I'm bad enough. I am not the worst of us. Let's just put it that way. But maybe. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Right now, the biggest challenge is for Wednesday night stream, and for those wondering what he's talking about, we're going to be having Yuri here, Knucking Futz Yuri. And I know you know who he is. You just don't know. You just might not know that you know who he is. But you've seen his footage. Absolute badass. He's currently in Ukraine. He'll be rotating to the rear, where he should have reliable internet service, and we should be able to work it out. But it's also going to be 1 a.m. his time. I asked if he wanted us to adjust the stream time a little bit, and he said, "Nah, I got it." So what a cool dude too. All right, let's move on to the next one. So this is that footage I mentioned earlier. So when I say I mentioned earlier, I know there's a lot of folks that are probably just joining us. What you're going to see here is earlier in the show, I started us with some footage of what maneuver warfare looks like, combined arms looks like with tanks and infantry. What you're about to see is the opposite end of that spectrum. We're going to see a drone-supported Donetsk People's Republic tank assaulting positions of Ukrainians at extremely close range in, if I recall correctly, this was Bakhmut. When I saw this initially on Telegram, I believe that's where this was. One way or another, it's somewhere in Donetsk, given that it's the Donetsk People's Republic. So that footage is coming up for you guys right now. Now, I will also tell you that the condition setting that was done ahead of this, since setting conditions ahead of the battle is something that's existed for an extremely long time. You know, the Romans threw slung bullets over walls. You know, we bombed Iwo Jima. The conditions that were set ahead of this tank rolling in were artillery. Coming up for you now.
Вражеский пулеметчик блокирует нашу штурмовую группу. Его находят с дрона.
I don't have a translation of what he's saying.
На поддержку прорывается наш скоростной Т-80, но теперь не на дальнюю позицию, а неожиданно вплотную к врагу, оставляя его в замешательстве. Боевикам страшно поднять голову, не то что гранатомет.
Дай правее, Ранос. О, хорош, еще дай правее.
All right, so it's important to get to set a little bit of context for you right now. The voice that you're hearing right now is supposedly, or is, from what I understand, don't always take what my stupid mouth says with a grain of salt. But from what I understand, the voice you're hearing right now is actually providing guidance to the tank itself, right? Almost as though it's acting in that support role that infantry typically would provide. So this is a DPR tank assaulting on its own at very close distances from Ukrainians. Anyway, I wanted to provide that little bit of context.
Уничтожение цели с 20 метров. Танк переводит орудие и поднимает на воздух соседние блиндажи. Командир прикрывает фланг очередями из крупнокалиберного пулемета. Противнику остается только накрыть минами свои же позиции. Во время отхода танка разведка замечает, что боевики начинают вести ответный огонь.
Броня откатывается. По нему работает порт, походу.
Но лобовой броне попадания не страшны. А вот украинские националисты вновь понесли большие потери в битве за Артемов.
Yeah, so you had two voices there. One is the voice of whatever talking head it was that was talking about the footage that we were just watching. And the other was the voice of the drone operator that, you know, presumably was relaying some of that critical information to the tank itself. So while the tank was all alone, it had a support structure behind it of the drone in the sky. Now, again, you know, typically from a support role perspective for tanks, you're going to want to have infantry, maybe some armored vehicle support, essentially something that can help you set actual physical conditions on the ground. But that drone, at a very minimum, is going to be able to provide some level of situational awareness. In Russian T-series tanks is extremely difficult. I've been inside of one. You can't see shit out of it. Let me just put it that way. One of my roles in the army was technical intelligence, which is essentially exploiting, you know, foreign material. And in the process of doing that, I've been inside of BDRMs, BTRs, you know, I was a T-72 more specifically. And I could tell you can't see shit out of it. So having that drone up there is going to provide quite a bit more situational awareness. Let's move on. This next one, let's talk about the title now. I actually thought I had this earlier in the stream. Is Ukraine advancing in Luhansk? Yes, they are. There is actually a salient that has been developing for some time near Kreminna. And ISW's map is going to be a little bit behind some of the other maps that are out there, but let's talk about it. Kreminna. Here we go. Full screen. That's the one I want. Still getting used to my buttons again. So Kreminna. There's a lot, if you were to go to Twitter right now and search the word Kreminna, there's a lot of information that's beginning to break about activity around Kreminna. There is somewhat of a breakout that ISW still has on here of Russia, the yellow area being claimed Russian advances in control. But the notable areas that I'm speaking to in the title are here to the north and to the south. The footage we're about to watch reportedly comes from somewhere in the Kreminna area. Let's pull back out here. ISW's map is typically going to be further behind some of those other maps that you'll find on Twitter, etc. And the reason being, and you know, I'll state this one more time and again and forever, I'll continue to beat on this dead horse. The reason being is they try to use multiple source intelligence, multiple source OSINT. You know, take that for whatever it's worth for you. a lot of these other individuals that are out there are really doing amazing work. You know, Twitter is fast becoming a really easy place to go to get at least a basic semblance or understanding somewhere down the middle of what's happening. And when I say somewhere down the middle, oftentimes you need to just read between the lines of whatever source it is that you're reading. But I choose to go straight to ISW. It's a little bit more reliable from a production perspective. I can go straight there. This is what's most current relative to the information that they have at hand, that they have been able to validate. So let's come back up. Let's take a look at this. What you're going to see is, are Ukrainians assaulting a Russian trench with grenades? Reportedly, as far as I understand, somewhere around Kreminna. At the end of this, you'll also see them taking Russian captives. POWs. Coming up for you now. There is no sound to this one, so we're kind of going to talk through it a little bit. Inside of armored vehicles, are they extremely claustrophobic? Yes. Also, how scary is it when you... I've never been under fire inside of an armored vehicle. I've taken mortars in a hard stand before. And that kind of sucks, but it's entirely different feeling, I'm sure. Blueberry, thanks for the 102 and the 513 that we just that I just read out there. That was a ballsy move, dude. I want to watch that one again. Steve, there's no comparison between an Abrams and a T-Series tank. No. The Abrams, and the real difference is going to be that the Abrams eats the T-Series tank before the T-Series tank even knows it's there. Did he get shot or tripped? I think he jumped. Looked like he jumped. No, he trips at the end. I thought it was going to be like John Wick dive and throw or some hot fuzz stuff, you know? You ever fired two guns whilst flying through the air? Let's bring it back up. Now, let's kind of turn things on its head really quick. What you just saw is POWs being taken. But somewhere also in the east, a Donetsk People's Republic commander is issuing some corrective guidance to some DPR soldiers.
А что вы сделали, блядь? Вы десятером нахуй раненых нахуй вывозили, блядь. Меня командир, меня москаль отправил, блядь. Мне похуй, что твой москаль тебя отправил. Кто такой москаль? Пидорас он, блядь. Понял? Я сегодня из-за вас, сука, 6 трехсотых нахуй. 2 двухсотых нахуй, понял? Вы эту позицию, сука, должны были забирать, блядь. Козлы ебаные, блядь. Меня ротный отправил. А мне в рот ебался вас ротный, блядь. Вы чё, пидор, трусливые, блядь, Ай! Сука, блядь! Блядь, блядь! Больно, сука! Больно, блядь! Пидорас, блядь! Больно! Сучара, блядь! У меня нахуй 10 дней, сука, парни! В окопах живут, блядь! Козлы, блядь! Сука, лежать все нахуй! Лежать, блядь! Сучары, блядь! Я вас завалю, блядь, всех! Понятно, блядь? Командир роты, блядь, нахуй сказал! Да я даже, блядь, пидорасы, блядь. Вы чё, блядь? Сука, из-за вас, блядь, 2 200-х. 2, сука, 200-х. И все, блядь, добровольцы, блядь. А не так, как вы сами, сука. Вы чё, блядь? 2, блядь, 300-х вывозили. Десятером, блядь.
На связи, Ахмат. Генерал-майор. Вот будет решение.
Товарищ генерал, через 5 минут доложу. Сучары, блядь. Вы считаете себя мужиками, блядь? Да? Нахуй вы сюда приехали? Нахуй ты приехал сюда? Повоевать? И при первом, блядь, обстреле очком, блядь, зажал?
Okay, so let me give you a little bit of situational context that, you know, it's gleaned from the video. At one point in the video, he says something akin to, I lost, not we lost, 6 men, something akin to that. What it looks like we're seeing here is some men from a different unit being, getting their morale improved by another unit's commander of some kind. But these are, I want to say it's DPR, Donetsk People's Republic. And I really, really tried not to laugh. I really did. You know, what he's ridiculing them or what he's correcting them on, but we'll call it what it is. It's corrective training. And it's going to continue until morale improves. Is that reportedly, or according to the video, they left their positions to move their wounded. And he said, you know, it took 10 of you to move 2 wounded. Yeah, that actually kind of makes sense when you think about it. Right, so 4 on the stretcher, one on each corner, plus maybe an escort. That makes 5 per wounded. That kind of makes sense. I guess you can, at a bare minimum, you need 3. So then maybe 2 following along as an escort. You know, it just 10 sounds about appropriate to me. That maybe that's just me. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts on that video? I felt bad about this one too because I thought I had stumbled upon like the best video we were going to have tonight, and I sent it across to Josh and Will, and I tagged everybody in it so they all got notifications today. And then Josh chimes back in. He's like, "Yeah, we already blogged that one, dude. It's already on the it's been on the website for hours." And I'm helping. Platoon morale officer. 10's fair. That seems like it's appropriate to me. 10 being appropriate amount of people to evacuate 2 wounded. The translation is fake if there's anyone. Hey, well, that's fine. That's fine. We still just watched some commander whoop a bunch of soldiers' asses with a pipe or something. Like one way or another, they did something that he didn't like. I don't think you could tell me that any of those hits were fake. That dude was beating on those boys. All right, let's move on to the next one here. The next one actually is something that I want to talk about a little bit before we move on. I almost had like a really long Twitter thread written up on this because there was a couple of OSINT channels out there were like arguing with each other. You know, one was calling the other one like Russia sympathizers or something for calling what we're about to watch, which is thermite, calling it like it is, that it's not phosphorus. Now, what we're going to see is the 9M22S being used. But I want to cover something really quick because there's still a lot of misinformation that gets shared about the murder sparkles, the 9M22S, or those incendiaries that are being used right now. These are magnesium-based. Now, thermite is typically either aluminum or magnesium-based. And technically speaking, they are in the incendiary category, which is where phosphorus would fall. Phosphorus glows at a very deep amber color and emits a very thick white smoke. There's a reason that the United States uses phosphorus for smoke screens. Thermite burns very bright. It's very hot. And the 9N22S is a munition, I want to say 122 millimeter, something along those lines. It's fired from a grad, the BM-21 grad as an example. And because it's ground-based, technically speaking, it's not necessarily against the United Nations Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, more specifically Protocol 3. Protocol 3, there are 5 total protocols. Protocol 3 was ratified by Russia in 1982. They have since ratified other amendments and protocols on the Convention for Certain Conventional Weapons, if I have the nomenclature correctly. They have ratified, different protocols and amendments to that all the way up to and including 2008. Here's the problem with Protocol 3, which is what essentially regulates the use of incendiaries in war. Paragraph 2 or 3, I don't recall which, has a loophole in it. And that loophole says specifically that you still can't use it by air, but when it's a ground launch system, if you can make the argument that you took all due precaution to protect civilians, you could still target military, you could still use incendiaries against military targets. When and if we as in the world, I don't say we as in me because it ain't going to be me. When and if anyone ever tries to hold Russia accountable for its use of incendiaries, Russia is going to claim that they were using it on, military targets. The problem with that is under most circumstances, especially in some of these smaller towns, we see them blanket entire towns with it. So that is probably one of the quote unquote war crimes that is a little bit more subjective. It really depends on interpretation of what they were using it against, but it's not as clear cut. Each time a new video of this gets released, there are a ton of comments. Why is the UN not doing anything about this? This is a war crime? It's actually not as clean cut as that. It's not as clear. Based on, international law. Again, I urge you guys, I tell you guys this stuff so that hopefully it maybe sparks something and you guys go out and you research it, you Google it, you Bing it, I don't know, whatever you're into. But the specific treaty to take a look at for incendiary regulation would be the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. Anyway, let's take a look at thermite being used over Bakhmut. But I had a whole thread written up on this, and I just decided not to use it. Something you do need to be careful of, though, and I've noticed this happening, is I find different versions of these videos all over the place. I've seen color correction being done on some of these videos to where the thermite is actually showing up as a deep amber color. Right now, there's actually an article that I came across, and we'll watch the footage while I'm talking about this. There's an article I came across that came out of Ukraine, so a Ukrainian news source recognizing this not being phosphorus. And to be honest with you, the differentiation there, it doesn't really matter. What matters more is that people understand whether it's phosphorus or otherwise. What matters more is that people understand that when fired from ground-based systems, there are still technically loopholes that allow you to use incendiaries on military targets. The specific language that's in there, I'm drawing a blank on, but it's in Protocol 3, Article 3, Paragraph 2, or Article 3, Paragraph. It's in there. It's not a very long treaty. It's very easy for you to get through. So that was in Bakhmut. We also have some use of that happening over Kherson. Now, Christmas Eve, Kherson was targeted by missile strikes, but it was also targeted by more thermite. Like I mentioned earlier, though, each one of these that you see, so each one of these individual clusters, that's a single grad rocket with 180 magnesium, I guess you could call them submunitions. They're non-fused. Essentially, when the rocket reaches its destination, those end up coming out of there. The magnesium inside of it ignites and it falls down to the ground, burning extremely hot. And it was actually designed as an alternative to napalm by the Soviets. So they wanted something a little bit more controllable than napalm that they could kind of still blanket an area in. But it's so often compared directly to phosphorus. Phosphorus is, still being used. It's used for smoke screens. Hey, Vitaly, what's up, man? Does the magnesium rounds kill people? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but for all intents and purposes, it should theoretically be, banned. It's technically not. Now, again, it is a little bit when Russia uses it to target population centers where you can't clearly differentiate civilian targets from military targets. That's a crime. It is, quite literally. But there is still, and rights groups have been trying to close that loophole now for a long time. There is still that loophole that allows it to be fired. It can never be fired by air. Incendiaries cannot be fired by air, but from ground-based targets. If you want to use incendiaries, you can use them from ground-based targets as long as you take caution or preparedness steps to limit, if I'm not mistaken, impact to civilians. Merry Christmas, Zard. Courtney, that's a good question. That's one that I don't have a great understanding of. Her question, if you missed that in the chat, is how high up is it when it detonates? So hard to tell from the videos how high it is and how fast it's falling. Yeah, I probably should have tweeted that whole thread because I was directing people to like technical specifications for it and everything. I don't know why I didn't. Too many armchair warriors on here. Yeah, me included, man. I'm not an expert. I try to research things where I can and when I can, though. Have you been paying attention? What? To what? No. All right, we're moving on out of the East. That was the footage that I had prepared for I call it the East. You know what I mean? If I went town to town, we'd have many, many, many more sections. But again, the focus of this show is not necessarily a news broadcast. Like if you're coming here to get your latest and greatest on exactly what's happening on the ground at this moment, we are not the best source for that. We are documentarians. We hope to provide a place that that you can go to when somebody says you're talking to your brother, sister's uncle. I don't know. That doesn't make sense. That would just be your uncle. You're talking to your uncle, and he's like, they're not using thermite in Ukraine. You go to the Funker website, and you can Google thermite, not Google it. You can search thermite, and we would have footage for you ready to show him. Right? Or if you wanted to see tank battles, you wanted to see some footage of the Taliban. That's our goal and our focus. It's not necessarily to be a news. I'm not a news anchor. I don't want to be. All right, let's jump into the next one. So we're moving into our unknown location footage here. This one's a pretty cool one to watch. I don't know that we've seen too much footage of drones on the drone receiving surface to air fire. So we're gonna see footage here of a Russian drone flying, doing its flying thing, but it's receiving fire from surface to air missiles from Ukraine. This is a pretty cool video to watch, and I'm interested to hear what you guys think happened to this drone. Nobody knows, but give me your best thought. There's a missile. Funker News Network has a fantastic ring to it, though. Yeah, but the name was actually made as a joke, kind of like a play on CNN, FNN. So here are my thoughts. That second missile does hit. The first missile misses. First missile misses. It's a mouthful. First missile misses. The second one hits. And it doesn't look like the drone goes down right away, but I do think that it caused enough damage to essentially force the camera into a malfunction, into a, persistent cycle of spinning. Some people were saying that it was purposeful to try and survey the damage, but in my mind, that's not very purposeful. It would stop at some point to really get a good look. I think the camera at this point is malfunctioning. Now, It doesn't look like the drone gets taken down by this. You're probably looking at Stinger or some form of a man pad there. Drone, yeah, correct. Yeah. Second missile is turret control. A lot of the time, those SAMs are proximity detonated, yeah. Took minor damage, made it back home. Yeah, it didn't look like it took too much damage there. This one is a cool watch. What you're going to see here is a Ukrainian, what we would call a sapper, digging an anti-tank mine out by hand and eventually using a rope to flip it over. Some pretty wild stuff here. Check this out. Now this one's a little bit long. It's about 4 minutes. We'll go full screen for a little bit. EOD are a different breed, dude. This guy's just sitting here humming. Somebody at this point would have shat my pants. It's a spicy looking Roomba. Single use, of course. Is he singing correct? Yes. That's not a knife. Yeah, we have a bomb tech on our team, and we always love just getting his feedback on these. Like, there was one video. Oh, what was it? The video of the Claymore with the F1 behind it. He got a good laugh out of that. So what you just saw is he tied a rope to the damn thing, and he's going to yank on the rope to pull it out of there. Give you a little bit of distance. I'm going to allow that comment, Draco. Still surprised didn't go off from the weight of his balls. Yeah, he probably had to tie him around his neck or like behind him. You know, sling him over his shoulder. Joseph, I was a 12 Bravo sapper, but man, I miss it. Nice, dude. Does this seem like normal, odd, you know? You know, when I first watched this, I half expected him to shoot it here towards the end. All right. Yeah, that one was a fun watch. Has his own theme song. Whistle while he works. Paid Guitar, thanks for the 513. Merry Christmas to you and the Funker 530 family. Paid Guitar, thanks for the 513. Abu Hudra, thanks again for the 527. Ronnie, my king and hard, I don't really believe that in a fight of a nation's survival, anyone cares about law. I've talked about that before, my man. You know, ultimately, the law of war is really only applied by the victor. If we're being honest with ourselves, the way I put it last time, you know, I don't think people took very well. But my point really is a war crime itself is a whole lot of irony, right? What is a war crime? How do you wrap laws around something like war? It's going to be subjective to the cultural norms, the moral norms of the age, you know, and with something like the fight that's happening in Ukraine, what I see a lot of people doing, and we're going to touch on a little bit of this here in a minute, what I see a lot of people doing is kind of, to an extent, being hypocritical about it. We're going to see some footage today of what technically could be considered a war crime being conducted by Ukraine, for all in, you know, but again, it's another one of those subjective areas. That, you know, is it or is it not? It really depends on your perspective and on, you know, whether or not the quote unquote winning half agrees with you. You know, I don't know. Who else did I miss here? Oh, Torek, thank you for the $5. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I'd like to know the thought process where dying in an overran trench is better than being taken as a POW. Yeah. So, I mean, what was it? Back in World War II, there was an area that we were, was it Iwo Jima? You know, history has shown, you know, almost repeatedly where cultures are ill or misinformed about their, you know, impending captors, and some of the concerns that, you know, could come along with that they choose to die. I'm trying to imagine or remember what specific battle I'm thinking of, but it was World War II, wherein essentially they threw themselves off the cliffs because their leadership had told them, if you are captured, you'll be tortured, you'll be killed, you'll be this, that, or the other. And from an isolation standpoint, and the same kind of rhetoric and such that they were told, you know, you can kind of see parallels to that with what Russia tells a lot of its citizens. I mean, it's not foreign. Russia admits that it controls its media. Nearly all of its media has grade lines. Some of ours does too, with state, you know, agencies and organizations. There are blurred lines between public and private sector. That's where we start to talk about corruption, and, you know, corruption being a scale. There's corruption everywhere, but that's too far down a rabbit hole. That was Iwo, was it? Okay, yeah. All right, let's move on to the next one. The next one's going to be not safe for work, to an extent. But I did make sure to tell you guys that ahead of time. What you're going to see are Russian troops huddled behind a wall, some injured, you know, most of which, if not all of them, are still moving. Ugh. But, you know, next generation warfare happens and a drone drops munitions on them. Here you go. Saipan as well. Okay. Yeah, well, like I was kind of saying, Woozer, is, you know, we've kind of seen that happen continuously throughout history. So you've got some pretty severely wounded already here. Some of these guys are still moving. And you can see the fragmentation here, probably both primary and secondary hitting the wall. So you can only imagine that it, unless you've got like a major elevation here, which I have no idea. But fragmentation from that would have absolutely hit. How do you know the Russian video has no color? Sure does. They've got white armbands on. I can see the red blood here. That's red. You can see the white armband on this guy here. They are Russian. All right, coming up. Those were Russian troops. Yeah. The next one you're going to see, we have this labeled as not safe for work, and it was really almost a CYA thing, just covering ourselves. What you're going to see is an FPV drone, one of those racing drones, the really fast ones that you got the cool Instagram reels where they're flipping and flying around. That's been modified with an explosive payload, and these are much smaller than your DJI Mavics. So they're like this big. Not that the Mavics are that much larger, but the payload on these is going to be much smaller than one of those a drone dropping a 60 millimeter mortar, something along those lines. But it's zipping around, and right as the video ends, we see a really close image of its recipient. It's the best way to put that. Coming up for you now. There is no audio to this one. It's a Ukrainian drone operator there. I guess that's about the same size as a Mavic. Yeah. But it is definitely one of those like racing models. That's a slight bigger than a Mavic. Yeah, you're right. You're probably right there. Oof. All right, coming back up. Oof. Yeah, it's the best way to describe the feeling you have when watching that. Oof. All right, let's. I want to check on some of the support guys. Abu Hudger, thanks for the 527. The Ukrainian guy in the earlier vid was using a 750 euro Hitler Youth knife. That's weird as hell. That is weird. Sure is. Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, it's just a knife. I'm sure there are plenty of Americans that have the same knife, but notable, at least. At the very least. I saw a comment that said I missed a super chat. I'm trying hard not to. Abu Hudger, thanks for the 211. Oh, the 211 for the letting us know about the knife. Nice. Rudy, thanks for the $2. Hope your Christmas was great. I tweeted you. Did you? Thanks, man. I always love the additional interaction on Twitter and on other socials. My Instagram's a total thirst trap, by the way, so don't go over there unless you're really interested in seeing nipple photos and stuff. Paid Guitar, thanks for the 513 before that. Abu Hudger, thank you for the 527. Thanks, guys. Let's move on. The next bit of footage here, we're playing with sound. I don't care if I have a copywritten issue. I don't. This is the Mi-8 operations throughout Ukraine. Everywhere, and it's quite honestly a banger of a video. Got 720p at least on this one too. guys, even if it was, if I had a Hitler youth knife, I'd use it. It's just a knife. Maybe he associates with it, maybe he doesn't. It's just a knife. Stop it. Relax. I saw a comment out there that was I don't know, whatever. It said something akin to, I would never use that knife as an American. Why not? To be honest with you, if I had the opportunity to own like an original Hitler youth knife from a history perspective, I would absolutely take that opportunity. Right? Imagine how much of our history is already being, removed from schools, etc., rewritten, changed. Owning it and maybe even using it might be an acknowledgement of the terrible history that it has. People look at things like that in a different way than I do, I suppose. Right? That you know, I've got a dagger from Afghanistan sitting over there. I have no idea whether that was made, you know, in a sweatshop or something, or if that's got like some history behind. I have no idea. That could there's some writing on it. There could be some really weird shit written on that. I would have no idea, but I know that there's history behind it. At a minimum, the history of my first deployment is sitting over there on that dagger. If you want to see it, we can check it out on the other stream. Sometimes people have a habit of diving so far down these rabbit holes of thought that, while based at some level in common sense, have really no basis behind them whatsoever. And to a certain extent, we have no idea what kind of knife that was. Right? If you do, that's great. I have no idea. Who cares? It's a knife. And he used it to dig out an anti-tank mine, and that's what we watched. Let's move on. This one's kind of a wild bit of footage here. We're going to see a Ukrainian soldier that at the very beginning of the video, he's kind of making a fuss about something. Well, he had just taken a piece of fragmentation to the face. Throughout the video, it'll zoom in at one point. You'll see him begin to bleed out of his face. But he continues putting rounds wherever he believes he needed to put them. Video's coming up for you guys now.
Соседнее здание прямо, сука, высунул ебал. Курва,
Вышел?
сука, осколком зацепил. Петух вонючий, он с пекой там сидит, нахуй.
Напротив нас здание?
Напротив нас здание, нахуй.
Блядь, отработай с пекой туда, заебал.
Пустой. Блять, он прям, сука, их там двое.
Блядь, киньте туди гепку. Под ствола тут киньте. Там кот пошел. Вон. Вот.
пидорас, Вадимчик. Гранати кидай. Це нам? Да. Высуни, ебал. Сейчас бы как бы гэпка не залетела. А? Как бы нам гэпка не залетела, блядь. Да. Вот пошли ты идет Влада и все.
All right, coming back up. The next one's a little bit comical here, but before I get there, I want to check in on some of the support. Uprising Portal, thanks for the $2.45. Dan, thank you for the $5. Was that blood in the windshield of the chopper about halfway through? There's actually a point in the MI8 video where glass is flying, and for the life of me, I can't tell if that glass is being shot out or if it's just shit flying around inside the helicopter. I don't know. That's a great question. Sayeko, thanks for the $5. Any new plans for merch for the new year? Yeah, we've got some ideas. I will tell you that we will have some new merch designs that will only benefit charity. We currently have the one that's up right now. But other charity work as well, maybe towards the middle of the year. Right now, what we're trying to do is drive as much as we can towards a global surgical and medical support group. We went to Ukraine with them. Their mission is something I believe in top to bottom wholeheartedly, providing medical training and, actual hands-on medical aid, in a forward deployed way. These are former U.S. Special Operations veterans that make up GSMSG, and we've accompanied them around the globe to South America, Ukraine, like I mentioned. But some of the other merch designs that we have are pretty funny. I'm going to have a new play on the HIMARS coming out here within the next probably month or so. All eyes for Funker right now are on SHOT Show. The whole Funker team in its entirety will be at SHOT Show, and we're not leaving anybody behind to monitor the front porch, so don't break in. But that should be a good time. It'll be the first time all of us have been on ground in one location at the same time. Really excited about that. It's Draco, thanks for the $2. Abu Hajra, thanks for the $2.11. David Colley, thank you for the $20. Keep up the good work. Love your views and the vids. Is it true that you can't throw a Willie Pete grenade far enough to escape the blast? I have no idea. I've never thrown a white phosphorus grenade. Couldn't tell you. I've thrown smoke, but different smoke, obviously. We do use phosphorus to, lay smoke screens. If you happen to be under that, all you were doing was laying a smoke screen, kind of one of those gray areas. Uprising Portal, thanks for the $12.26 before that. Appreciate all you guys. Torek, thank you for the $10. Ronnie, when I was active at 13 to 60, we'd make fun of drone operators' desire for combat medals and PTSD-like compensation for their actions. Think we need to treat drone ops as combat roles or no? It depends on what your definition of combat role is, right? If it's, direct action or not. That's really hard to say. That's that's a $20 question on a $5 budget for me. I am one of the people that firmly believes that it doesn't matter what your job in the military was. There are people that measure their dick size with what their job was, and for a long time I felt weird, being an absolute pogue. I did. I felt weird about it. I used to always talk, I was outside quite a bit, quite a few missions. My first deployment, my second deployment, I traveled all over Afghanistan. But then I realized that, I should probably lean into my job, be proud of what I've done in the military. And I'm very proud of it. Not to talk about personal stuff that I've got going on, but I've got my new personal website that went up that goes well into what I did in the military. And the problem that I have with people kind of classifying, my job versus your job relative to how experiences can make you feel is you don't know other people's context or situation. Your biggest problem could be somebody else's speed bump, right? Or your speed bump could be somebody else's worst nightmare. You have no idea how certain situations might impact another person's psyche. And we're starting to understand that more and more, to the point now where, you know, we're even kind of relabeling PTSD to just PTS, you know, trying to take the stigma away from it. You know, that stigma that for a long time only certain jobs or specialties were allowed to claim. Post-traumatic stress is a scale. It's not a yes or no, or do you deserve to have it or do you not? And we're only really starting to understand that more and more. Relative to what your job was in the military, look, I think it's great that you used to be great, right? But what about now? All right, what, you know, I just have a different perspective on that than most people. That's just me. I don't want to stick around on that too long. Let's move on. This one's a little bit comical, but Reddit went just absolutely wild on this one. You know, really soft-brained kind of stuff. What you're going to see here is helmet cam footage of Russian troops engaging with Ukrainians. But at the end, we're going to see Russia take another hostage to go right alongside the Hirson trash panda, raccoon. I'll show you the video and then we'll come up, we'll talk about it. to the garbage can. I purposefully don't watch news. Like, that's why I don't consider us to be a news network, like a news show, right? Providing the context around what's just happening, it cannot be news anymore, right? If we were to use all of our, stellar examples, if we were to look at that, you can't just provide context to a situation anymore. You got to spin it. There's got to be an agenda, and we deal with that. I deal with that here all the time. Ronnie's paid CIA operative. Fuck, man, I wish, dude, because if I am, I just haven't been paid yet. And our sole function and goal is to show this footage in the state that we found it and try and provide some level of context. We don't have a goal. We don't want to lead you to believe one thing or another, especially if we don't have an answer of what it is. We will literally state in there, we have no idea what's going on in this video. It looks like a cluster. If that's what the video is, that's what we're going to tell you, if that's all the information that we have. I want to check in on some of this support, though. Sweet Mooch, thanks for the $1.49. Appreciate it very much. I'm really bad at this, guys. I am. We get so enveloped in conversation, discussion about the footage. I need to be more active in paying attention to the support you guys send across, because it does matter. We're a very small team. Torek, thanks for the $5. Jesus, Ronnie, hit me deep. And that stuff you said is what I've been feeling, but too afraid to voice in fear of being thought weak. Hold on for a minute, my dude. You don't have anything to prove to anybody. All right, you can be a badass at whatever you do. I don't care if you're washing dishes or if you're a law enforcement officer. You can be an absolute badass doing that, and you have nothing to prove. All right, acknowledging that you have an issue, that you're having feelings, or that you're running into challenges with something you're dealing with. That's not weakness, right? The only competition that you're in is with yourself. And again, I have nothing to prove to you. You have nothing to prove to me. All you got to worry about is you. All right. Be a little bit better tomorrow than you were today. Be a little bit better today than you were yesterday. Continuing down that path, working on self-improvement. If we all did that, the world would be a better place. I'm going to get off my Dr. Phil soapbox there. But I appreciate the $5 very much, man. Thank you. Uprising, thanks for the 245. Funker 530 is epic. Yes, they are. Bunch of pipe hitters. I love getting the opportunity to work with these dudes. Ronnie Top Dog. No, I'm the new guy, man. I just work here. Marvin, thanks for the $2. Have you listened to Scott Riddler, U.S. Marine Intel Officer? No, but I've been dropped the name before. And it's probably at this point something I should absolutely do. The next one. I have no reason to show you guys this video. You're not going to learn anything. But what I am going to do is I'm going to direct you to the comments section, and we're going to go full screen for it. So here's the video. We'll watch the video first.
Второй уёбыш, блядь, завис над танком, нахуй. Вот он сейчас висит, блядь. Хуй его, сука. Не сработал он или шот. Ну тоже, блядь. Сейчас непонятно, что с ним, блядь, уебать, чтоб не уебал танк. Хуй его знает. Ну, короче, второй приземлился вот прям в дерево. То есть ему помешало дерево.
All right, so what you're seeing in this video is a Russian Lancet that gets caught up in the camo netting of this Ukrainian tank. The Lancet is a kamikaze drone. It's a loitering munition. But it got caught in the camo netting. Now, if you guys are familiar with our website at all, we're very proud of our comments section. It's fully custom built. And we have an absolute treasure in the comment section. His name is Ace. Ace is a big fan of Russia. The only reason I wanted to show you this video was for the first comment. Because, oh yeah, here you go. Anyway, zoom back out here. All right, we got a couple more videos to get through here. We are gonna move into some footage from Russia proper. Again, we cover footage from all over the globe, right? Not just what's happening in Ukraine. The app and the website predates Russia's invasion of Ukraine by many, many years. In fact, there have been people that were born and have since died in the amount of time that the website, the YouTube channel, and other Funker 530 platform elements, and other Funker elements, I'd like to point that out as well, have been around. The first thing I wanted to hit, which is going to cause a little bit of a stir, I have talked before about Russia targeting power infrastructure. Well, Ukraine targeted power infrastructure inside of Russia in Bryansk. This is a power substation being hit by Ukraine. Now, this is one of those weird situations where the laws of war, whatever those are, the international law of war, dependent upon which treaty it is you're looking at, is subjective. What do I mean by that? Well, targeting critical infrastructure, essentially targeting electrical grids, water supplies, etc., is actually held up by U.S. doctrine. The law of armed conflict. U.S. doctrine specifically states that you are to absolutely do so, target the enemy's ability to receive things like electricity, when you can definitively prove that specific critical infrastructure supports military purposes in almost all cases, right? So, understanding that there is collateral damage. War sucks. Yeah, hopefully, being a part of the Funker 530 community, we help you understand that over time. War sucks, top to bottom, left to right, from start to finish. It's shit, wall to wall. But a lot of people in mainstream media, and myself included, have really decried Russia for the amount of critical infrastructure that they target. And I knew when we posted this strike that those that are, pro-Russia, for those that are out there, I have actually yet to meet anybody in person, like in real life, that is pro-Russia. There are a lot of anti-support to Ukraine because of domestic issues, folks, and I can actually kind of understand those arguments a little bit, quite a bit better. But I knew that when we posted this video, we were going to get a whole lot of flack, and there wasn't as much of it as I thought, because of the amount of times we've talked about Russia targeting critical infrastructure. There's a key differentiation here, though, to an extent. Russia is targeting critical infrastructure in places like Lviv, well off of any military reliance or structure, right? Unless Russia's going to invade from Poland in the west, they're not setting conditions for military action. Targeting critical infrastructure that is directly supporting military defensive posture is something you can absolutely do. Where the line starts to get really gray, though, is when you're invading a country and the critical infrastructure that's being used by the populace is also the same critical infrastructure that's used by the military. So, top to bottom, Russia's targeting of critical infrastructure versus what we just saw in Bryansk, two kind of different scenarios. However, this is still Ukraine targeting an electrical substation inside of Russia, that one could make the argument that it was not necessarily providing support directly to military operations. Directly, maybe indirectly, from a training perspective, from a logistical perspective. I digress. I wanted to kind of cover thoughts around that video. Don't feed trolls. Correct. Don't feed the wildlife. That'd be stupid. That's weird. Anyway, let's move on. We've got some footage from November. But the whole of Ukraine is technically a military base now. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's akin to you know, bombing of London. You know what I mean? All of London's critical infrastructure was directly supporting its defense, or not London, the Great Britain. So, and that's why I said there's that weird area where, you know, when Russia invaded, technically the critical infrastructure of the entirety of Ukraine is supporting both the civilian population and the military. And from a strategy perspective, a tactical perspective, what that doctrine is really designed for is, you know, very targeted type attacks, not necessarily a strategic, you know, path forward, right? Well, we can target all of Ukraine's critical infrastructure because technically the entirety of Ukraine is a military base. That's not how that's supposed to go. Say, for instance, Russia was trying to set conditions in Kherson for an assault. Well, then targeting certain substations in Kherson where there are an abundance of military troops would make sense, technically speaking, according to the way even the United States does war. You know, it happened in the Gulf War. It's something that we do. It's something that you do. And I think it's that gray area where people are kind of afraid to live in, you know, the public, right? This strike wasn't something that was covered very well in mainstream media. And that's because technically it's a gray area. It is. Anyway, let's move on. We've got footage from November from inside of Russia of strikes on a Russian oil depot.
Раннее утро, 4:30, жители села Стальной Конь проснулись от громкого хлопка. На первом же резервуаре черное от копоти пятно. Подойдя чуть ближе, уже видны повреждения. Как беспилотник проник на нашу территорию, в ближайшее время расскажут эксперты и правоохранители.
Ukraine makes only symbolic attacks that have brought them harsher responses. I disagree with that. Maybe some of the strikes into Russia, except for this next one, because this was absolutely a military target. I would say that Ukraine has been very effective in setting conditions by striking very strategically. The conditions that they set in both Kherson and Kharkiv prior to their major advances in counteroffensives were surgical, quite simply. And that's largely enabled by Western weapons. The precision of Western weapons is far outclassing and outshining anything that the Soviets built or that Russia has fielded in Ukraine since. And words matter. I said that Russia has fielded. I recognize and understand that there's a possibility that there's at least some things that aren't being used by Russia, but even their most advanced currently fielded tank, the T-90, is being captured. It's been destroyed. You know, Western weapon systems are on full display right now. What we're about to watch, though, is a massive explosion at Ingalls Air Base, Ingalls 2. Ingalls 2 is about 700 kilometers away from Ukraine. And it was a very large strike, large enough that you're gonna see in this video that it turns night into day. It's believed that the last time this happened, it was a repurposed Tu-141. The Tu-141 is a Soviet-era UAV, very old, antiquated technology, but it wasn't supposed to carry a payload. And now it's believed that Ukraine modified the Tu-141, which has the appropriate range to reach that far. But what's more telling is that it made its way all the way into Russia without being shot down. If it was the Tu-141, there's an alternative theory out there that, and some reporting to support, that Ukraine has developed very recently a new drone that has a 1,000-kilometer range and is designed to carry a payload. I don't think anybody has the exact answer on this, but here's that strike on Ingalls. And we'll talk a little bit more about the significance of this. Now, what most of Russian media reported initially after this is that it was a small, inconsequential strike. It's not a small strike. That's a large explosion. Now, like I mentioned, the airfield is about 700 kilometers, and a lot of Russia's strategic and nuclear-capable bombers are kept at Engels. It was targeted once before, I want to say December 5th, on or around. And again, there's still a lot of discussion on how or what exactly it was or is being used to target Engels. S-400 is better than Patriot? That's pretty dumb. Yeah, no, I would have to disagree with you on that one. Now, I want to show you guys a quick image of the Tu-141, which absolutely looks like something from the Soviet era. You know how you can just look at something like, yeah, that's what that looks like. Like that's some Austin Powers, kind of rocket stuff. But if it is what was used, it's proven to be effective. And again, I go back to what's amazing is if that old-ass technology has made it from Ukraine all the way into Russia, 700 kilometers away, never got shot down. What's the state of Russia's air defense what air defense do inside of Russia? That's the only part of this that leads me to believe it might not be a Tu-141. That it might be something more advanced. Something designed to elude air defense, with capabilities that are more modern. Not a 1980s era UAV. This is supposed to be a UAV. This is not a missile. It's not a cruise missile. It's not designed to have a payload. If this was what was used, and I am not the only one to talk about it. This is very common discussion right now. It's been modified to have a payload. Interesting for sure. All right, come back up. Air defense on Christmas break. You'd think with an active conflict in the area that they would have canceled some leaves. All right. So that's what I have for our Ukraine perspective footage. We're not done though. We've got 2 more videos to watch. The very first is happening on, if you're American, obviously. Not everybody here is American. If you are an American, this is happening within spitting distance of your southern border. And I do mean that quite literally. At certain points of the Rio Grande, you can spit across it. It's not, all of it is not that wide. What you're going to see is the cartel ambushing Mexican army in Nuevo Laredo. This is extremely close to Americans in Laredo, Texas. Very recent, too.
Dale, vamos.
Hold on a second, guys. I see a lot of comments. I can't see where the enemy. You wanted to pause the firefight and like turn the vehicle. Can you guys hold on? Time out. Need to turn the camera so that all the people on the internet can see what we're shooting at. They're off to the left somewhere, guys. Stop. All right, let's bring it back up. I want to check in on some of the support. We have one more video to watch. Torque, thanks for the $2. Barani, the administration says the border is secure. Yeah, okay. Okay. Daniel, thanks for the $10. What about the targeting of civilian areas? This is going to go back. I can already tell. This is going to go back to our discussion about critical infrastructure. Apartment housing by Russia, and more so now that it's getting colder. That's not criminal? I never said it wasn't. Right? So what you're talking... When I say critical infrastructure, I mean electrical substations, dams, things that are providing energy, electricity, running water. Those things that we would consider to be life resources. Absolutely targeting population centers is criminal. Yeah. Yes. All right. David, thanks for the $20. I think it's time for Ukraine to take the gloves off and start a serious attack on Russia. They've got their hands full in Ukraine right now, though. Nearly a year of holding back. I wouldn't say they're holding back either. I think they're taking ground back in certain situations, being a little bit more methodical about it, too. And the Russians keep attacking civilians. Time for Russia to feel the pain. Your thoughts? Yeah, I would say the priority number one for Ukraine is expelling Russia from their territory that's internationally recognized. That it's Ukrainian ground. It is. Russia has no purpose in Ukraine. There isn't one. I've heard every argument. I have. Torek, thanks for the $5. The infrastructure question, I disagree with Ukraine striking on Russian infrastructure. The Russians didn't do it first, let alone... That's the eye for an eye argument, right? An eye for an eye leaves the world blind. You know what I mean? Two wrongs don't make a right. There's a whole ton of Grandma 101 kind of sayings that go along with that. And again, though, I'm not saying one way or another that it's right or that it's wrong. That's not what Funker530 is here to do. Ultimately, I can tell you how I feel about it, and that is that Ukraine has a lot of Western support, and doing things they need to do what their rank can handle. I'll use a very, very army way of saying that, wherein essentially if they feel that they have enough support that they can target critical infrastructure inside of Russia without that support waning, they can do it. That's their decision to make, not mine. We're documentarians. We document footage, right? I wish that I was more in tune, more of an expert on, geopolitics for you guys. That's just not what we do. These are very large, complex problems that are supposed to be what the best of us in government are solving. I could tell you that I once believed that those that were in public office in our government were the best of us, the smartest of us. And I no longer feel that way. Let's move on. We got one more video to watch. I hope the owner of Funko530 shows up in the chat, but that would never happen. He's here all the time. All the time. All right, anyway, let's move on. Somebody let the owner of Funko know that we're looking for him. The next video you're about to watch, the last one for the night before I jump over to the other stream and kick back, we're going to play Hell Let Loose, I think, tonight again. You're going to see a Taliban official. I don't know what the definition for being an official in the Taliban is, but that's what the report read, so that's what you get. Being targeted by an Islamic State in the Khorasan province car bomb. Now, during my second deployment to Afghanistan, ISKP was one of my target sets. And if you're unfamiliar with Afghanistan, from the northeast in Nangarhar was where they were most prevalent. Since the departure of the United States, they're continuously encroaching further and further upon central-ish Afghanistan. They were already trying to move into Kabul, but the counterterror joint task force I was with was really keeping that from happening. It was keeping ISKP from proliferating further throughout Afghanistan. Well, what you're going to see in Badakhshan is a car bomb, very clearly, blowing up a crowd of people. I don't know how best to put that for you. I would consider this not safe for work, and it'll be the last one before we close out the stream for tonight. Here is that video for you. Okay. Coming back up. Do you have a pic of Funker? Funker is he was a Facebook gaming partner. He was a Twitch partner. Funker Gaming. Just go there and watch videos. Yeah, he's not hiding. He just chose to transition to work more on the back end. You guys would be surprised how much time, energy, effort goes into the Funker 530 platform. The app, the website, both needing different skill sets from a development perspective. We have a dev team that supports us, but Funker himself does a lot of the aesthetics work. And when I say aesthetics, how something looks when you click on it, the colors. When we need minor changes to the website and things like that, he often deploys a lot of that stuff himself. There is an immense amount of energy for such a small team that goes into the entirety of the Funker 530 platform. We are not just a YouTube channel. I understand we might have started that way, but we're trying to expand beyond that and bring you guys, again, the app that allows you to take the website with you wherever. There are a lot of new features that are coming out here very soon as well. And there are a lot of OGs out there that were around for the longest time that know that Funker he's a gamer. He plays DCS. He's been trying to get me into DCS. I just can't. Guys, I can't. Too many backseat drivers. That's going to be it for tonight. Before I go, I need to once again mention our sponsor, and that's going to be Nautilus Ammunition. Guys, again, their go-to, their bread and butter is 9mm and 5.56. Those are my two primary calibers that I keep. I've got literally both of those calibers sitting over there. If you want to check those out, come over to the other stream after this one. That's what they specialize on. They have subscription services that if you sign up for a subscription for a box of ammo, it's oftentimes, from what I can tell, I have purchased and shot quite a bit of their ammo. It's going to be cheaper, and that is because they are a manufacturer of ammo, not just a reseller. So they don't have to put their own markups on it in between the manufacturer and the consumer. You, me. Check out Nautilus Ammunition, folks. Down in the description, there is a link to their Instagram. Go check them out. That's where you'll find, information about products, new releases. But their website is going to be easy enough to find. I can't link you directly there because YouTube has really weird terms of service. And that's just the realm that we live in and have to play in. I'm out of here. Thanks for joining me. There's a few more over here that I need to get to, though. Jonathan, thank you for the $10. People who want Ukraine to invade Russia need a reality check. Ukraine is doing their Western military still like the training and officer corps. Hopefully they kick Russia out. Yeah, from a capabilities perspective, it's just not something that they have the breadth for, in my opinion. Take my opinion for as far as you want. Torek, thank you for the $2. Daniel, thank you for the $10. Frank, thank you for the $10. And David, thank you for the 20. Thank you guys for joining me here tonight. That's going to be it. I'm out of here. I'm going to go hang out on the other stream and kick back, play some games. If you guys are, want to join, you're more than welcome. We'd love to have you. I'm going to play Hell Let Loose tonight. Kick back maybe field some questions, talk about what's coming next for both Funker, for me, Josh, Will. We'll see. But we'll see you there and stay informed.